Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, and we're here today with episode number 12, the Homework Solution Edition, in our incredible new tutorial series where you're going to learn artificial intelligence or you're going to die trying. What I'm going to need you to do is pour yourself a nice strong cup of iced coffee. That is straight up black coffee poured over ice. No sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. And as you're pouring your coffee, as always, I want to give a shout out to you guys who are helping me out over at Patreon. It is your support and your encouragement that keeps this great content coming. You guys that are not helping out yet, take a look down in the description. There is a link over to my Patreon account. Think about hopping on over there and hooking a brother up. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's jump in and talk about what I am going to teach you today. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the solution, my solution to the homework assignment that I gave in lesson number 12. And what that homework was for you to demonstrate that you understood the HSV color space. And you were to create two windows. In the top window, you were, as you went across the columns, you were supposed to change the hue from 0 to 179. As you go down the rows, you were to change the saturation from 0 to 255. Then in the second window, as you went across the rows, as you went across the columns, you were still supposed to change the hue from 0 to 179, but in this one, the second one, as you went down the rows, you were supposed to change the value, the HSV, the value from 0 to 255, and then generate those two rainbow charts so that you start thinking in the old HSV color space. And why do we do this? Because if we're going to track objects on color, something like this, if we're going to track on a color, the HSV color space sees the colors much more like our eyes do. Our intuition between the math, what the math says and what our eyes says is much, much closer. And it becomes a much, much simpler problem. But if you're going to do that, you've got to really understand that color space. So what I will need to do is switch over here so you can see me code. And I will need you to fire up your most excellent Visual Studio Code. And then we come up here, and what we are going to need to do is we are going to need to create a new program. And I do believe that this is going to be OpenCV-16.py. And the .py is kind of important. And boom, a fresh new Python program just waiting for you to write it, okay? Now, normally we would go over and grab our program that grabs a frame and shows a frame from the camera, but hopefully you guys see that we're not going to be using the camera today. We are not grabbing a frame from the camera. We are generating an image on our own. We are generating the picture on our own because it's a data set and we understand how to do that. And so I hope you guys understood that. So the first thing we are going to need to do is we are going to need to come over here, and I need to make sure, I think you can see what I am doing pretty well. We're going to need to import, and we are going to need to import CV2, okay? We are going to need to import the program CV2, and then also the library, I should have said, we're going to import NumPy because we're going to be dealing with this as a data array. So we're going to need to import NumPy as NP, okay? And then what else do I need to do? Well, I need to go ahead and generate, that blank picture, right? That blank picture is going to be a data array. So I need to create a data array. So I'm going to call that picture that I'm going to display, I'm going to call it X. And what is X going to be? It is going to be a NumPy array. So I'm going to say np.zeros. So I'm going to create a NumPy array and I'm just going to fill it with zeros. All right. Now, what would I need to do on this? Well, remember, what did I say the rows the rows are going to hold, in the first one, the rows are going to hold the saturation values, and so the saturation values are going to go between 0 and 255. If the saturation values are going to go from 0 to 255, tell me, how many rows am I going to need? I'm going to need 256, because I go to 255 and then I have 0, so I'm going to need a total of 256 rows. Well, how many columns am I going to need? I'm going to go from hue values of 0 to hue values of 179. How many columns am I going to need? Well, I would need 180 columns. Okay, and then each one of those positions is going to have how many numbers? It's going to have 3, because it's going to be hue, saturation, and value. So each one is going to need 3. Now, just like always, what I need to do is I got to tell it what data type to use, and the data type is going to be a numpy dot what? Unsigned int 8-bit. So that's u, int, and 8. So that's an unsigned int of 8 bits. And so it's going to fill that array with 0. So that is all really, really good. And then what I can do is I can come down here still and say while true. When is true true? True is always true. And what do I want to do? I want to cv2.imShow. And then what do I want to show? I want to show my HSV window. That looks good. And then what do I want to show? I want to show that X array that I just created. Okay. And then I'm going to make sure that it is up in the upper left corner. So I'm going to do a cv2.move window. And which window do I want to move? My HSV. Okay, and then where do I want to move it? I want to move it to 0, 0, so it's up in the upper left corner. Now I need to make sure that I'm able to exit gracefully. So I'm going to come down and say if cv2.wait key, I'm going to wait 1. And then I've got to put that mask on it. You remember this nonsense? I got to and that with 0ff. Okay, and if that's equal to the ord of Q, okay, what do I do here? That looks pretty good, I think. Okay, what do I do here? I break, so I break out of the while loop, and then what do I do? Well, I can do a cv2.destroy. I hope I can. cv2 dot, I think it's destroy all windows. This might crash because my little happy little help me put things in there isn't popping up right now. But let's go ahead. This should just generate, it should just generate a window and everything should be black. But let's just make sure that we don't have errors before we move on. So, and of course we do have errors. And so I have, it didn't like this and 0ff. Why does it not like that? If cv2, did I? Okay, import. You know what my problem is? My whole problem was I put uppercase CV. Okay, now let's see if this thing will run. Okay, still doesn't like the 0ff thing. So CV2, do you guys see my error? CV2 dot wait key 1 and it with 0ff is equal to ord. That sure looks right to me. Let's see what I did wrong here. For some reason, 0xff. You know what I think? I think maybe I'd put an O instead of a 0 there. That is probably what happened. But let's try to run this thing now. Okay, it does not like that. Position 2 not found in matrix C. Okay, and what line is that on? In IMShow. Okay, so let's look at what I did. CV2, I am show my HSV. Okay, and what do I want to show? I didn't give it what to show. I need to show X. And so that is a good error there. So now let's look at this. Okay, there it is. Boom. I've got a window, and I go on columns from 0 to 179, and I go rows 0 to 255. So I got a little window here. So that is looking good. Okay, so now I'm going to come in, and I am going to start generating the colors, okay? Well, what do I want to do? Well, I want to start by going through, what I want to do is I want to go through the columns first, and then I want to go through the rows. Well, if I go through the columns first, that needs to be on the inside. So what needs to be on the outside? The outside needs to be the rows. So I'm going to step through the rows. So I'm going to say for row in range. Okay, for row in range, I want to start at row 0, and I want to go to row 256. But remember, it stops one before 256, so it goes from 0 to 255. Remember that nonsense with the range function? We've gone through that many times, and I want to step in once. So as I go through this for loop, row is going to go from 0 to 255 in steps of 1. Now, that's going to go through the rows. But inside that, I want to go through the columns. So I'm going to say for column in range. And then what am I going to go? Well, I'm going to go from 0 to 179. So I need to go to 180 because it'll stop one before 180 because of the goofy range function and steps of 1. So I'm going to go from row 0 to 255. I'm going to go from column 0 to 179. Right? Does that make sense? And then what do I want to do? Well, I want to modify X. Remember that X that's all zeros? I don't want X to be all 0, but I want to modify it 1 watt at a time. I want to modify it 1 pixel at a time. Now, this is the thing you got to remember, that when you index a data set, when you index one of these NumPy data sets, or you index any array, it always starts with row, comma, column. So the first thing I need is the row that I'm on. I want to change the X array at row, row, and at column, column. So row, column. X of row, comma, column, that is 1 pixel. Okay. And then what do I want that pixel to be? Okay, well, this is going to be an HSV value, right? This is going to be an HSV value. So I need how many numbers? I need 3 numbers inside of parentheses. So something, comma, something, comma, something. Well, the first value is the hue value. What is the hue value? The hue value is the column. Okay, so this is going to be column. All right. Now, hue saturation. Saturation is going to be what? Okay, saturation is going to be the row on this first one. And then the value, the third number is what? I said pin it at 255. So the value is always going to be that. Okay, now I've created that rainbow. And most of you probably did this, and most of you probably got this result. How many of you got this happy little rainbow that doesn't have all the colors? Tell me, be honest, how many of you got the happy little rainbow without all the colors? Okay, this is why I think probably many of you failed. So let me know how many of you had this problem, and of those of you that had it, how many actually figured it out? Okay, what did I just generate? I just generated an array X that is in what color space? HSV. Good job. Proud of you. What's the problem? OpenCV won't display HSV. It wants what? It wants blue, green, red. So what do I have to do after I've created this array? What do I have to do here? I have to say X is equal to CV2.CVT color. Why am I converting it? Just so it'll show right. Just so it'll show right. I can work in the HSV color space, but when I display it, I've got to go back to BGR so that it will show right. So I need to take X, and then I need to do a what? I need to do a CV2 dot COLOR color, and then what do I need to do? I need to go from HSV to what? BGR, like that. So now I'm going to convert it to BGR, and then boom, look at that. I have got the rainbow, okay? And look at it. On the top row, the saturation is what? 0. So everything is what? It's like clear, it's white, there's no color. And as I come down, saturation gets more and more and more saturated. When I get down to the bottom, then it's like I am spinning around. Oops, that's the wrong one. I am spinning around this color wheel. I am spinning around this color wheel, particularly the one up in the left. 0, it's like it starts at red, and when you get around to 180, you get back to red, okay? Do you see that? And I've generated that here. And the up and down is just how intense, how saturated it is. And the left and right is what? It's the color. It's what the hue is, all right? But now there was another part to this homework. But before I move to that other part, what's the one thing that I don't like very much? The one thing that I don't like very much here is it's kind of all squished up. I want a bigger rainbow. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stretch this out. Now, it's not going to add any color. It's just going to make it is just going to make a bigger window so that my rainbow will show a little bit better. So what I really want to do is instead of 256, I'm going to multiply that. I'm going to multiply that up. Instead of going to 256, I am going to, let's see, I'm sorry. This 180, I'm going to multiply it by 4 so that it's going to get 4 times longer. I don't want to make it 4 times higher. I want to make it 4 times longer. So this row column, the number of columns instead of 180, I'm going to make that 720. Okay, and then similarly here, so I create that NP0. Similarly here, this is going to go, the rows are still going to go 0 to 256. That is still good. But now in this column, instead of going to 180, I need to go to 720. Okay, and then here I'm still putting in row and column. Okay, I'm still putting in row and column. But then in this column, okay, this is changing slower, so I need to say column divided by 4, because still the number I want to put in, this is the actual value that I'm stuffing into the array. That number still needs to go from 0 to 179, so I'm going to take column and I'm going to divide it by 4. Think about it if it doesn't make sense. Now that, I got to make sure that that is an integer value, so I'm going to make an int of that. All right, I think that should be it. So this, because I'm dividing column by 4, it's still going to go from 0 to 179, but it's just going to put it, it's going to map it onto 720 pixels. And so let's run this, if we can. What is that? Boom! Look at that. Big, beautiful, colorful rainbow. Okay, that one looks a lot better. So this one, I'm changing in the columns, I'm changing the hue, and in the rows, I'm changing the saturation. Now in the next one, I want to, in the columns, right, I want to still change the hue, but in the rows, I want to change the value, but it's going to be very, very simple. And so it's going to be very similar to this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take these lines of code and we're going to copy them. And now I'm going to come down here and paste them, but I'm going to create a new array, and this will be my Y array, okay? And then this would also be putting data in my Y array. But now what is the same? I'm still going to go the same size image. I'm still going to go from 0 to 256 in steps of 1. I'm still going to go from 0 to 720 in steps of 1. But now, okay, The hue is still going to be going here, okay, but now hue, saturation, value, what is this middle number? This middle number is saturation. I want to pin the saturation at 255, and then the value I want to be what? The value I want to be rho, okay? And so that should then make, as you're changing the rows, that's going to change the value. Saturation is going to be pinned at 255. Now I have created a new array here. Okay, I'm going to change that new array from HSV back to BGR so I can show it. And now I need to come down here, and I'm going to grab those two lines of code, and I'm going to come here, and then I'm going to IAM show Y, and this will be HSV window 2, and then I'm going to move HSV window 2, and then what I want it below the other one. So this is X comma Y, so I'm going to move it over 0, and I'm going to move it down like what? Probably row, but then remember we got to allow for that little top bar on our window, so I'll add 40 to it. Okay, I think this might work. Let's see what happens. Boom, look at that. Okay, 2 rainbows. Now this second one, look at the second one. The top line is all black. The top row is all black. Why? Because value is 0. And when value is 0, everything goes to black. Then as value goes up, the black starts getting turned down and the natural color starts emerging. So you take any color, any hue, you give it a value of 0. You know, if you take a hue of any color, the HSV, the third number, the value, if you set that to 0, you're going to go back to black. And then as your value begins to move up, your color starts emerging from that blackness. And so it's kind of like the saturation. You could think about blending from white up to your color. And then with value, you blend from black back up to your color. Does that make sense? Man, if you guys did this, you really understand HSV. I imagine that probably a lot of you struggled with this. I think probably a lot of you struggle with this because even though you can see it's really, really, really easy, you've got to really be thinking about your arrays as pictures and your pictures as simple data. Okay, you've just got to be able to do that. And the little gotcha in here is always with the IAM show, you've got to show it in BGR. So you create it in HSV and then you got to show it in BGR. And so that was the little bit of a trick. Hey, you guys, some of you sent me messages. A lot of people were saying, hey, there was no contest or secret word or anything like that, little trivia contest. So what I would like to do is I would like to go in and give you a little trivia contest. This time what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a mystery person. Okay, I'm going to show you a mystery person, and then the contest is the first person that can identify who this person is. And there's 2 questions. Who is he, and what was something extremely unique about this person, something that this person could do, or some attribute of this person that would probably be like the only person, one of the few people on the face of the earth that would be able to do this. So are you ready for the mystery person? Okay, the mystery person is this guy. Looking for the first correct answer of who can identify this man and who can say something very unique or special about this guy. Okay, guys, I hope you're having as much fun taking these lessons as I am making them. I am really having a blast here. We've kind of gone in and we've really understood the HSV parameter space. And so what we're going to do now is in the next lesson next week, what we're going to do is start going in and saying, pick a color, and then can we track on a color? Can we zoom in and can we grab and can we track an object based on its color? That, my friend, is when we're really beginning to actually do artificial intelligence. Okay, guys, if you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up. Be sure to leave a comment down below. You're a legend, or you're folded up like a cheap lawn chair. Be sure to try to identify this mystery person, and then be sure to tune in next week for another great lesson. Again, Paul McWhorter from TopTechBoy.com. I will see you guys next week.